Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're having an exciting event today to talk about the latest brain technology and how to optimize your brain with this latest technology and how it can be applied, into lifestyle and stress management and all the other things that we do to take care of our bodies and our brains. But this is really an exciting time for this technology to help take us from just treating our bodies with chemistry, with nutrition, to physics, where we're able to deliver energy directly to the body. And if you are here, you're interested in optimizing your body and maximizing the potential of your body as you age. And it's an exciting time where we have options now to not only get the benefit on the brain of increased mitochondrial energy, circulation, oxygenation, and how that affects the brain right away for performance, for cognition, but it also affects the body because the brain runs the body as well. And today we have two awesome experts who are going to give a nice in-depth overview of what this technology does and how it can really not only prevent potentially future cognitive issues down the road, but increase the performance of your brain now. So I'd like to say, up front that if you're here, you qualify for this technology. Just the way that you qualify for a healthy diet or a customized exercise protocol, we all would benefit from what this technology can do. I've been pretty immersed, in media production for alternative medicine for a long time. And the last few years, I've done quite a bit around brain technology and interviewed a lot of different people, neuroscientists, testimonials of people with everything from traumatic brain injuries to cognitive issues, all that have been dramatically benefited by utilizing this technology. So it's really encouraging because these issues around dementia and a lot of the issues that we face later on in life are devastating illnesses. And we really have hope now for either mitigating a lot of the symptoms or even preventing them. So we know knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is transformative, I think. So and the two experts that we have today are not just experts in the science of this, but they are actually experts in they have clinical experience, decades of clinical experience, actually treating people for the whole variety of illnesses, from autoimmune conditions and chronic illnesses to optimizing athletes for their performance. So I want to start by introducing both of them. The first one is Dr. Jeff Drobot, who's my personal doctor and has been my doctor for about 10 years. And he has he's featured heavily in a documentary I did called Lighting the Path, where he helped guide me and several other people out of severe chronic illnesses that we've been facing for a long time. And in that film, we covered a lot of the technology that he uses as well. So I'm a bit biased and a big fan. But if you're not a fan of your doctor, then maybe it's time to redefine, what your doctor is or what you even call a doctor, because both the guys that are on today are the way in which I believe a doctor should truly be, and not only somebody who really is truly deeply interested in your biology, your unique biology, but also is always pushing the envelope, constantly exploring and learning what is out there and what can help us in our lives. So I'm going to read, before I fumble through much more of Dr. Drobot's bio, I'm just going to read it a little bit here. Dr. Drobot is the visionary biological medicine physician, biohacking pioneer, and published author of an incredible book, by the way, called Bioregulatory Medicine, one of my absolute favorite books on health, highly recommended. He's recognized as a leading authority on European biological medicine, electroceutical performance technology, and athletic performance. He is the founder and co-founder of the Biomed Centers in Scottsdale and New England, collectively the largest, most preeminent biological medical centers in North America. He has spent the last 20 years harnessing the cutting edge of science of biological medicine technology to assess and amplify human biology and physiology. He is passionate about guiding people near and far who envision being free from chronic illness and those dedicated to preventing a serious diagnosis from ever manifesting. I can certainly speak to the truth of all of that. We also have Guy Odishaw, who also has decades of clinical experience running the Bhakti Wellness Center and specializing in treatment-resistant chronic pain, traumatic brain injury, psycho-emotional trauma, as well as neurofeedback. Additionally, his 20 years as a meditation instructor and facilitator of courses on personal growth help him understand how to support clients through the potent changes arising from neurofeedback. He believes brain training does not only alleviate unwanted symptoms, but it often also positively changes one's whole sense of self and relationship to the world around them. So let me just admit a few more people into the chat here, or into the event. And then I also want to encourage everyone to write in the chat. Click at the bottom. You can click chat and put in your questions, and there will be a nice Q&A toward the end here, where we'll have the opportunity to answer your questions. So Dr. Drobot, would you like to take it over and give us a kind of a beginning overview of light therapy and a bit of this technology that we need to be interested in?
I mean, I can tell you where I started and probably where I found Guy along the path. And then Guy is, I mean, I am not even though I love tech, and to explain it, to me it works, and to have somebody else explain it to you probably makes a lot more sense. But I've been involved in this for, we'll say, athletes and chronic disease for, like you said, 20 years. And I started my background in exercise physiology, sorry about that. And then kind of went into medicine with thinking that, you know, there was a whole bunch of advancements and everybody was, you know, on the cutting edge of everything. And then you realize, like, you have to be on the cutting edge of stuff, because there's not that much advancement either in athletics or medicine, for example. So we built these clinics and we had all this stuff from Europe coming in. And the one area that was really difficult to get to was the central nervous system. So with people with Lyme disease or autoimmune disease, injury, I always say injury, infection, inflammation, and intoxication. Those are the things that really are a hardship on the central nervous system. And I, Gabe, as you know, love the central nervous system because I do a bunch of testing and training on it, because I believe that the central computer, if it's down, a lot of the parts distally that you're trying to treat won't work. I mean, I've been frustrated for a long period of time. And the supplementation is very difficult to get into the central nervous system. We use a bunch of ozone and IV therapy. So there was a little, I could say that I've never have a problem saying that I didn't get the result that I wanted. You know, I have no problem, and I'll keep looking. And when I finally found photobiomodulation and some of the things that Guy was doing, that was the light bulb moment for me when I said, you know, we wanted organ-specific therapy. And that was just very difficult. Like, you can put lasers, we can do colonics, and we can do a lot of therapies on other organs, but to do organ-specific therapy on the brain, because, you know, you have a hard skull, and again, that blood-brain barrier that really prevents a lot of things from coming and going into it, it was very difficult. And so I had been in brain scanning for a long time and nervous system testing for a long time, and, you know, had built these machines in Germany, which I opened the other day and showed this other physician, and we just kind of had a laugh because he thought it was innovative and I knew it was a waste of money. But it was 10 years ago, and it had some lights to it, but it had no power. And in the last couple of years, meeting, like I said, Guy, and seeing the innovation, what he was doing with neurofeedback and his ability to use some of the physics to get inside the brain. And then I was a very quick adopter after that, because I leave the engineering up to engineers. I know what I want out of something, and all I need to do is see a result from it. And so I'll let Guy explain kind of the bits of it, because it's a very slick, easy system. You know, I always say, like, treadmills are easy to get on. You just have to push on and go, and your heart will benefit from it. We really didn't have anything at home for the brain where you could just turn it on, exercise the organ, wake up some things that were asleep, and we'll say power on some things that didn't have the right power before. And that's as simple as we wanted to make this system. It was, you push play, you do this for 30 minutes a day, and we can prove it with imaging, but you can prove it with results that, you know, your brain will benefit. And to have the ability to do that, whether you're young or old, is just trust me when I say that's a miraculous thing in medicine. from the last 20 years to be able to do something and greatly impact an organ that even 10 years ago just was really impossible to do. And to be able to do it at home when Alzheimer's, dementia, and all these things are climbing up the ladder and they're so debilitating, is truly, that is a miracle of medicine. And I'll let Guy explain kind of what's in the system, and he knows light like I don't. So I'll let him explain some of the nuts and bolts to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Robot. I'm going to go ahead and just pull up the slideshow here. Wait. Go. Okay. So you spoke briefly to the the supplement side, medication side, so what I call the chemical side, in that we are chemical electric beings, and so we use supplements, pharmaceuticals to treat the chemical side, food. So that side is well known. There's a lot of good things happening in that world: proper diet, good supplementation, medications when there's nothing else that will do the job. So I'm going to really focus today more on the electric side of the chemical electric equation. And I'm going to frame a lot of today in the form of dementia. So that's just kind of the topic, but everything I say really can be applied to brain health. And in that we're talking about generating health, it doesn't particularly matter the condition that we're talking about. But dementia is one of the top goals for us to bring a solution to the marketplace, and it's a place where it's desperately needed. And so I'll talk a good amount about it today. So, just one of the motivations for Cerebral Fit, one of my motivations for doing this has been, a statistic like this, which is if we can at least slow the progression of the disease, we can keep a lot of people out of the worst manifestations of the symptomatic condition, and ultimately trying to keep people from being hospitalized, institutionalized, keeping quality of life as high as possible for as long as possible. So another thing for us to think about, because often what happens is when we talk about treating conditions, whether it's anxiety, depression, OCD, traumatic brain injury, dementia, any of the conditions, the main thought that's in most everybody's mind is just resolution of the condition. And I always think that's a great goal to have, but I also like to talk about the ground that comes before complete resolution, which is just improvement. And in something like dementia, where there is at this point in time nothing that resembles a cure, then I think it's even more important that we talk about everything that can happen before in today's terms, the impossible, right? Which is a cure for the disease. And so that's really about how can we improve somebody's quality of life. And so this is a nice little slide that talks about, how quality of life is impacted by this particular condition. So most of our neurodegenerative diseases have a very similar profile in terms of loss of quality of life across multiple dimensions, not just function, but ability to enjoy life, ability to enjoy eating, the ability to enjoy time with family. And so this is one of my goals with Cerebral Fit, again, is can I help my clients regain this quality of life? Can they enjoy today with treatment more than they would have without treatment, right? And again, it just shifts the goal away from, are we curing the disease? That's a conversation that I mostly try and avoid having. So here's an excerpt from a series of texts that I've received from one of the husbands of one of my dementia clients. And I'll let you go ahead and read that. But one of the things that makes me happiest as a provider is I get texts like this every week, as family members are watching their loved one kind of come back to life and the return of function. And there's always such joy with that, right? And in this one of my favorite lines is where he says, "It's just like the good old days." And that means so much to me when I hear, and in particular in this couple, that one of the things that has come back to them is, now they can go on a date, they can go out for supper, they can go for coffee with friends. This is something they've not been able to do for the last 5 years, and this has come back to them. So there's a great deal of joy in that. Another aspect when we talk about something, and again, any of our chronic degenerative neural conditions, is that there's comorbidities that come with it. So we don't want treatments that necessarily just target one symptom or one part of the condition. With Cerebral Fit, we wanted to bring something that allowed us to treat as many as is practical in any one given individual, so that we can address things like, in this slide talks about hypertension, pain, depression. So obviously depression and dementia tend to go hand in hand. And so one of the things that we are able to do with our devices is we can cover multiple conditions and be able to address them kind of with the same suite of devices. So it gives us a lot of inputs, not just for the primary diagnostic condition, say dementia, but from the sequelae that come from that. And so that's one of the ways that I like to think about and talk about, again, treating something like dementia, but again, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be OCD, it could be traumatic brain injury. And not think about the diagnosed condition and can we resolve it, but think about it in its layers. So again, when you think about something like dementia, we have about a 15 to 20 year prodrome to the building up of the presentation of symptoms. So by the time somebody shows up with us, if they're already presenting with symptoms, there's a lot of momentum in their system that we need to counteract to be able to bring that back under control. So there's something about like treating the disease, but then having a neurodegenerative disease, the process itself is dysregulating to the organ. And I'm going to show you some slides coming up here in a little bit that are going to demonstrate that in some objective ways. So then we've got a layer of dysfunction that isn't by the disease, it's by the sequelae of the disease. And then those dysregulations further dysregulate the brain, and so there's more loss of function. And there's also what happens just from the awareness that one has a degenerative disease, and the change that's kind of subjectively through the mind that starts to have an impact as well. So we have multiple layers of this condition. And what I like about the technology is the same technology can address all of these. And as a matter of fact, does address all of them. And it's what we see early on in treatment is, we could start to see results in week 1. Well, in week 1, we're not really treating the disease, dementia. We're treating the dysregulation, the loss of function that the organ has. The brain can perform these functions. It's just been dysregulated. If we can restore that regulation, we can restore that function very quickly. So we can often see progress started within that first week, but it's months out by the time we really expect to be changing the physiology in a meaningful way. But in the meantime, plenty of function may be restored to the person. So one of the questions that always comes up as I'm talking to people about Cerebral Fit and what we can do, because in a sense, it seems like we're doing the impossible. People ask, is there research? And so, just again, this is fresh information. I did it before the presentation. I looked for neuromodulation. There's 205,000 studies, 13,000 of those just in 2022. And so that's a good amount of information on specifically neuromodulation. That's what we do with our devices. But if we look at the broader topic of near infrared light therapy, what do we have? 2.2 million studies available and 58,000 just in 2022. So when people ask this question, is there research? The answer is yes. There are mountains and mountains of research. And when people say, well, I want to look into the research, and I'm like, okay, I'll see you in 10 years. Because I put in about 6 hours a week of continuing education, and I can't make a dent in this much research coming out. So it is all founded on a very solid basis. I'm going to step into now it's just a series of pictures. There's a lot of information here on the screen. I look at these brain scans all day, every day. I'm going to point out a couple of things that I want you to see across some general trends. So one is the picture on the right. You see all the blue. So blue in these means too little, so deficient, right? So what is this showing us? That there's deficient brain activity. So we call this blue brain, and it's within the field, it's a term that's really come up around cognitive decline and neurodegenerative disease, this idea of blue brain, where we just see underfunctioning, right, underactivity. So that's one of the things we look for is, do we see this blue just in multiple frequency bands across the measurement in dementia? The answer is almost always yes. This other one is called peak alpha frequency. It's a very well understood metric in brain health, and peak alpha frequency should be 10 hertz, and it should be 10 hertz across the whole brain, and pretty much across an entire population from, say, age 16 to age 70, we would expect it to be about 10. And any amount that it falls off is problematic. So I'm going to see if I can, this will let me, so I can bring this in here a little bit. So what we can see in this one is these numbers are pretty consistent. They're low, right? We're hanging out down around 9, and they should be up at 10. So this is a little low, and that's characterized by this green that we see here. But it's pretty consistent. So that's good. That means the timing of this brain, the timing mechanism is working well, even if there's low function. All right, so then we'll step on a little further. So this is one of my Bredesen protocol clients, a person with a dementia diagnosis. And we see the blue brain. We do see here, though, that there is some activity up front, and so that's good. I was happy when I saw this in the brain scan. It means there's something there for us to work with. And this guy, actually, considering his age and his diagnosis, is doing very well. But here again, we'll look. What we see is, a pretty consistent peak alpha frequency. Again, slow, but the timing mechanism is working pretty well. Those two things are in his favor in terms of why is he doing well at 80 years old with a dementia diagnosis, because some of that function has stuck around. So here, another one of my clients, we can see less of that kind of red activity, so less activity for the frontal, more blue. When we look in here, we're going to see more of a distribution. So the change is more ranging from 9 to 7.2 is on our low end. So here we start to have two things happening. The timing mechanism, the thalamic cortical loop, is off. So the timing mechanism in the brain is off, and we have a decrease in neural activity. So two systems now are starting to go, and indeed for this person, you can notice it symptomatically in terms of how they're actually doing. Here, you guys probably already know how to look at this. You don't even need to tell me, right? This person is doing worse, right? We've got a good amount of blue, but over here, a lot of red. So we actually have here is the opposite condition that can happen, which is this brain, in an effort to try and keep up, is running faster. So we have a high peak alpha frequency, but again, the timing mechanism is off. And so we have, two systems in this brain that are not going in the right direction. One last one we'll look at, and this is a person. So I've just been showing you kind of, in order of kind of severity of symptom and how they respond to treatment. This is somebody who is not doing well at all. And again, we can see the amount of blue, so the amount of area where there's very, very, very low neuronal activity. And here again, we can see this range. So part of the brain is racing very fast, trying to keep up, and part of it is running very slow, which means we have very poor communication within this brain. And so brain function you would anticipate being quite compromised, and indeed in this person is very compromised. And here, just for variety, I'm going to show you somebody who's 70 years old, so they're in the zone where they could be, but there's no concern. This person is not a dementia person. This person actually had a stroke, but what we see is not very much blue. So there's a good basis of neuronal activity. We've got a fair amount of red, which is a little overactivity, but we'll take it, right? In the scheme of things, we'd rather have too much than too little. And again, when we look at peak alpha frequency, we can see it's running a little slow, but again, consistent. So the thalamocortical loop is working, the timing mechanism is working. This person has a lot more of their brain functioning. And again, you can tell in their presentation and how they're living their life and what they're doing. So these brain scans are pretty indicative of what's going on, and are a great tool for assessment. So I'm going to jump now from, we're kind of looking at how does the problem present from an objective measure standpoint. And we're going to jump into now kind of the devices and the treatment side. And I'll run through those quickly. So here's a look at the whole setup, kind of our flagship product. This has got the infrared helmet, the audiovisual entrainment devices, the glasses with the flashing lights, and the nasal laser and ear lasers. So this is kind of the three pieces, kind of all in use. And if you were, to go the Cerebral Fit path, this would be a piece of your everyday, having some fun in this way. So I'm going to take a moment and just kind of walk you through the devices themselves. So we've got our near infrared helmet, and we have red, nasal laser, and light. And kind of a quick rundown of what are some of the benefits, right? So photobiomodulation, there are roughly 17 benefits. Relative to dementia, some of the top ones, of course, neurogenesis, growing new neurons, synaptogenesis, growing new synapses, angiogenesis, growing more vasculature. You've probably heard about vascular dementia, where the vascular system is the main thing that's breaking down. So an ability to be able to address that. Also true in somebody, say, for example, with stroke, traumatic brain injury, where blood flow needs to be restored. So great benefit. Being able to increase mitochondrial activity, so the kind of the energy producer in the body. When the body has more energy, it tends to use it for healing and regeneration, right? So we want to increase the amount of available energy, and then just let the body do what it will do with it, right? And it's one of the nice things about working in this area is this is all kind of health positive effects. We're not anti anything. We're not trying to stop a disease process. We're trying to increase the vitality of the system and let the body do what it would naturally do. So here, our audiovisual entrainment device. So again, we can use this to control some of the physiology, increasing blood flow. I talked about the thalamocortical loop and what happens when the brain, the communication system is off. Here, we're able to directly address that system and try and restore the synchrony or the timing mechanism of the brain. And this is one of the reasons why we can see change quite quickly in symptoms, is when we get the timing back, a lot of function comes back, right? So again, we can activate microglia, kind of the housekeepers of the brain, which is really important in many brain conditions where there's inflammation. If there's been damage, tissue damage, we want to be able to clean that up and get that out of the brain, stimulate the lymphatic system, and kind of detoxify and cleanse the organ. Also, audiovisual entrainment allows us to work with the state. So we can work on focus and concentration. If people are having sleep issues, which is a big problem in most brain disorders, sleep is affected. So if we can help restore sleep, we go a long way in helping the person and their brain recover and return function. transcranial stimulation. So the same device, the audiovisual entrainment, also does transcranial stimulation. So it's nice. We have 3 modalities in one. And transcranial stimulation main effect is normalizing the resting membrane potential of a neuron, which basically just helps the brain move back towards an endogenous normal, right? Which is kind of preparatory for the other modalities. And then here, just a quick mention, sleep is a big deal. So we do sleep tracking and can do an at-home sleep tracking program so that we can quantify, is your sleep changing? We're not just waiting on a subjective report. Yes, I slept better. No, I didn't. We can actually look and see how did that sleep come? How is it affecting? And are the devices we're using actually being effective at changing the sleep pattern? Right? So I want to just touch base quick. So this is, you may recognize this as one of the images that I showed above for one of my dementia clients. And this is a before and after. This is after about a year of care. So going through the Bredesen protocol, so working diet, lifestyle, supplementation. And then this person was very compliant. They did daily audiovisual entrainment. So that was their main choice in terms of a device, was audiovisual entrainment. And then they actually came into the clinic to do neurofeedback. So that was kind of how we work with this person. And what we see is actually a really significant change in this peak alpha frequency, which is well known in neurophysiology to be a difficult thing to change typically. But we were able to create quite a bit of change. This gray area is basically a return to normal, right? So you can see no gray in the before, quite a bit of gray in the after, and that's kind of returning him back to an age and gender comparison to a normative database that he's moved back into kind of the normal range. So still a little cleanup work to do, but really an impressive change for something that is difficult to change the brain. So I'm going to pause here for questions. And then if there's more time, we can go into more detail. I covered a lot of things very quickly there. We can always circle back to whatever. But if there are questions either Gabe that have come into the chat, or if people have questions that they would like to bring in now.
Great, yeah. Yeah, I'll encourage everyone to, you can go to the bottom of the screen, click the chat and put in any questions that you have. I think I want to, the tech, it gets very technical there to look at all of the science of what these devices do, and then of course what the different conditions look like. Maybe you could go into a little bit about how the devices can also be used separately. I'm a big fan, for example, of the simplicity of the nasal laser and how that works, and all the benefit of something, instead of needing always to put on all of those devices, which is great if we're willing to do that. And but maybe kind of going into the individual benefits of each one, how also maybe they optimize for now for conditions we might be dealing with, whether that's just tinnitus or sinus issues or cognitive issues, and optimizing performance for now, as well as how that over time, the way exercise can help prevent things, or nutrition can prevent issues down the road. Some of the evidence for the way that benefits us going forward to prevent cognitive decline.
Yeah, so a number of questions kind of nested in there. You mentioned the nasal laser. Actually, so can we break this up into pieces? Yes. So a person can buy any one of the devices, where they want to get a helmet, AVE, nasal laser separately, any combination. But yeah, the nasal laser, to me, I kind of call it's the low-hanging fruit, right? They cost $200, so very affordable. The reason we use the nose is it's a very efficient delivery mechanism. The nasal membranes are very thin, so the light passes through them easily. We can irradiate all the blood in the body in about, so in a 30-minute treatment, about 6 times all of the blood will pass through the nasal passageway and get irradiated. And here we're doing we're getting the free floating mitochondria, so the mitochondria that are in the blood. And so this is a whole body effect. So, do you get a local tissue effect? Yes. So if a person has like an allergic rhinitis, you could use a nasal laser as a treatment. The light gets into the eyes. So we treat a lot of macular degeneration, retinitis pigmentosa, things of that nature with the nasal laser, because the light actually gets into the tissue of the eye. So we get both a systemic effect and a local tissue effect with the nasal laser. And it comes with ear lasers, so you can pop in the ear lasers, which are, a person might try this if they have tinnitus or hearing loss. Again, in my dementia clients, what I like to hear is, they're using the ear lasers to get light into the brain, but I love it when the reports come back saying, I've been listening to I've noticed the TV volume is getting lower. And so they're able to hear the TV at a lower volume, which is fantastic. It's like an added bonus, right? So nasal laser is a great way to, very simple. You just, you put it in, it's fairly innocuous. Clients, you're watching TV, do a treatment. If you've got a long commute, pop it in your nose and have it in for the drive. You'll get some interesting look from people in cars around you, but that can be fun.
I leave mine on my desk and legitimately do this every day.
Yes.
And other than just the sheer glee of doing it, I don't necessarily have symptomology, but I sure get sick less often. And I noticed, this is Arizona, it's dry. It is highly beneficial also for dental infections, and I'll leave that at there, which are again kind of a tinnitus and dental infections are often that with the central nervous system are very difficult to get at. So that's one of my favorites, and I leave mine on my desk and do it every day that I'm here, 5 days a week.
Yes. And then we've got, of course, the mouth guard for being able to get in the mouth and deliver directly to the teeth and gums. But nasal laser, again, it's going to get into the maxilla and get in the area. So yeah, it's I call it the low-hanging fruit. It's kind of a why not, right? At $200, it's a very easy way to get red light into the brain. We also know that the nasal laser, the light makes it into the brain. So we can get into kind of the olfactory bulb, so loss of smell due to COVID. We can get into the hippocampus, which again has to do with memory issues. So it's a great choice. I noticed there was a question came up kind of asking around the helmet and the strength of the helmet. So the one that we use is a 1070 nanometer infrared light. We're running about 24 milliwatt per centimeter square of actual light energy. So if you're into light therapy, you know that what you're looking for is power density. So what's the and it's given in the milliwatts per centimeter square. So we're running about 24. And so that's something that you'd be looking for is there enough power density to get the physiological changes that you want. That has to do with time and distance, and when you have a helmet, you're putting it right on your head, you close the distance piece. And then also with our helmet, we're able to change the frequency so we can get into the entrainment side, which is kind of like it speaks the language of the brain. So we can talk to the brain and help shift brain function through using pulsed light, which is a little bit different than using just straight continuous light. I'm a fan of both, but we need to know going in which do we want to treat? Do we want to do brain function, or do we want to do physiology, or do we want to do both? And that tells us what our treatment plan would be. So the question came up, where can people get these? So cerebralfit.com, www.cerebralfit.com is our website. At the end here, we'll put up some information, phone number, website, emails. People can reach out to us directly. But all of our products are up online and can be purchased online.
And cerebralfit.com, the link is in the chat if anybody wants to click that and check it out. Guy, you mentioned speaking the language of the brain, and I think that's interesting to help understand how giving the brain sort of not only speaking the language of the brain, but then giving the brain something to work with that helps either optimize it and normalize whatever the function is, whether that's give more energy or maybe even bringing frequencies that help calm the brain in certain based on different conditions we may have, whether that's anxiety or depression. You might speak to a bit about how that works, and also maybe a bit about how you guys also customize protocols for people based on each person's needs.
Yeah. So again, I kind of feel like, one of the things that's helpful is kind of go down the list of benefits, which, and whether our number one is increasing mitochondrial activity, so increasing energy production. Number two is increasing circulation. Number three, interfering with the inflammatory process. So being able to, in a very kind of specific way, ratchet down the inflammatory process. And we have the ability to get down to the level of mRNA transcriptase. So this is kind of an epigenetic effect, and when a cell makes a copy of itself. So getting into the function, like that's a big long kind of conversation, because there are just so many things. So it's easier to know kind of the condition that we're talking about to be able to highlight like what are some of the things that we might want to do for that condition. Like somebody posted into the chat, Andrew posted in vertigo and Meniere's, and would it help? So it's a little easier to talk to, right? So the question here becomes a little bit like, what might the cause be, given that there's a few different things that could bring about vertigo and Meniere's less so, but the vertigo. And so one of the things it can be is just neuroinflammation, right? It can be simple as having a sinus infection, or just a cold and getting a little inflammation in the nerve. And so red light, infrared light is great for reducing inflammation, right? So we can just say, well, there's a simple mechanism, like how might it help with vertigo is through reducing inflammation, and can be that simple. But we could also get into, is the vertigo rising because of a imbalance in the autonomic nervous system? Is there a little sympathetic parasympathetic imbalance? And we've got a branch of the vagus nerve, so the parasympathetic nervous system in the ear. So we can do vagal nerve stimulation with the nasal laser, the ear laser, and balancing that system, that may bring resolution. So we've got a number of mechanisms, and this is where, having a good evaluation, understanding what's going on, we can, again, much of this doesn't really particularly matter to the person, the mechanism, like in a certain way, like Andrew's question is great, is like, will it help? Quite likely, yes. Give it a shot and see. So that's the nice thing with red infrared light, with the sheer number of benefits that it gives to the body. It makes itself available as a reasonable treatment option. And, can we get into the science and what's the mechanism of action? Absolutely. And I think it's worth doing. And that's what I do when I do consults with people, right? We take the time to go through their medical history. We look at whatever diagnosis they have, what tests do they have, what do we know about what might be the generators of the symptom, and then match a technology that makes the most sense to address whatever the generator of the symptom is, right? And so I see that there was a couple of questions that came in here. One was, how does this compare to the lumaceuticals? And so I'll maybe just skip the brand name, but just talk about things kind of in general, where you're dealing with things that are more kind of like a wrap, kind of soft-sided technologies. So there's any number of devices on the market that are kind of soft-sided, and the limitation there is power density, right? And we just don't have the technology yet to get. I don't want to say that it isn't effective. They are, but we want a high degree of power density. It's more photons into the body is kind of our goal. And the wrap type light devices, they're just, as far as I'm concerned, in developing and treating, like developing devices and treating clients in the clinic, I just don't see them as having the power density to get the results that we want in a predictable way. So that's kind of my leaning away from those devices and towards the ones that we've put into our suite. Is we chose things that are giving us clinical results, and that's what makes a device in or out for Cerebral Fit. Is, are we getting reliable, predictable, consistent results across a population? So I can have some sense when somebody says, can you help me? I can feel reasonably confident that the answer is yes, based on that I've been able to help a number of people who present with similar condition that they have. So one of the questions is, which works best for a person already diagnosed with dementia? So when we get into dementia, or again, I'll say any of the neurodegenerative diseases, so it could be Parkinson's, it could be dystonia, there are some questions about like how far along are they, how progressed are they? And those are important to have, but I'll just like to be a little more general. If a person has that diagnosis, then my best suggestion is they should do all three devices. They should do the helmet, the AVE, and the nasal laser, because there's a powerful force at play in the brain, and we want to try and counterbalance that, right? We need to try and counter that force. And you know, as much as I love the nasal laser, if somebody's at a point of having a diagnosis of dementia, we don't want to look at the nasal laser and say, I'm going to rest everything on this, right? I mean, if that's the only option, you know, mostly that would be a financial reason, might be a compliance reason, but mostly be financial, then great. It is absolutely the right choice if that's the only choice you can make. But my encouragement is always, when we're looking at a neurodegenerative disease, is let's do the whole Cerebral Fit system and give this person the best chance at restoring the function that's there and can be had, and putting some momentum, you know, in the opposite direction. They have plenty of momentum moving towards a devitalization, and we want momentum towards vitalization of the organ, right? And so that's my best suggestion. But of course, on an individual basis, this is what I do all day when I talk with people, is we pick and choose for that person what's going to be the right starting point, and you know, what are they going to do? Because that's, you know, the bottom line is the best treatment plan is the treatment plan that the patient will do. If they won't do it, it wasn't a good treatment plan. You know? So.
Right. And Dr. Drobot, do you want to speak to some of the philosophy behind Cerebral Fit, as well as what you both have as far as a philosophy around medicine as more like performance medicine and optimization, and how this can benefit, you know, benefit us now as well as why it benefits us later? You might have to mute yourself there.
Voila, right?
Yes, sir.
So again, now we're getting into the ability to, you know, have an organ that we can treat. Now, when people say like, do I want to treat dementia? It's like, I don't really want to see dementia, because if we did the stuff that we needed to, and probably the environment wasn't the way that it was, we probably wouldn't see a whole bunch of it. I mean, when I'm talking 20 years in medicine now, and I go back 20 years ago, I mean, this wasn't something every day that we were seeing. So by that time, I mean, now we come to this place and we say, what's the philosophy? The philosophy is still like, don't get it. Right? Like when you have technology, like you usually use technology. I always have this conversation with patients and they say, why are you in this technology? And I say, because technology makes things easier, right? Like we can all understand that. Now, let me tell you, technology is harder on your nervous system in a certain thing. But when you say, what's the philosophy? The philosophy is like, when we have organs and they're the only ones that we get, invest in those organs and invest a little time. You know, it's time and money. Trust me, this isn't a whole bunch of effort. But I'm telling you, in the next 20 years, our goal will be to spend more time on ourselves and probably less time on medicine, and do the things that can really get organs performing and get organs regenerating, because our treatments aren't necessarily changing. So, from a philosophical standpoint, I can say the environment is getting harder, life is getting a little more taxing, and we're wanting to do things longer. So when we put these three taxes together, we'll say our physiology isn't adapting as fast as we would like it, but technology can. So, I mean, I don't wait for things to happen. I don't have any reason to put this up my nose, except that I know that when I do scans and stuff, it benefits my brain. Just like I don't have any reason to take a walk. I don't have cardiovascular disease, right? I got nothing diagnosed, but I understand now from exercise physiology that it's a good thing. So I hope everybody listening to this call understands that this isn't medicine as much as it's prevention. It can be medicine, but the whole goal is like put it into practice, because again, when you lose your central nervous system, it's a mad scramble. When you see this live, like Guy and I do every single day, and you take a phone call, I mean, spending 20 minutes a day stretching your back, people will do that. It's like you put a helmet on, some glasses, and a nasal laser, it lights up your entire brain. There's no supplement that does that. There's no IV that does that. There's no meditation that does that. And now that we can do it in a form factor that is relatively inexpensive to somebody and lasts a long time, there's no reason not to do it. So there's no philosophical thing that I need to have. When you see the effects of it, you would say, and you see the devastating effects of not doing it, I mean, these end up to be a pretty simple answer. Yeah, do it, right? Like, pretty simple, doesn't hurt. And if nothing else, it'll get you a better quality of life. So invest in yourself and invest time in it.
And one of the things too that's really encouraging about all of this technology, which has been around a long time, and it's always being more and more refined by the devices like what you guys have now and how to deliver energy to the body, but the safety. You might speak to the extraordinary safety of these and whether there are any contraindications, but from what I understand, there aren't many, if any.
I mean, Guy showed you already the body of knowledge, and people will say, well, why didn't it exist if it's been studied for so long? And it's like the manufacturing was not possible. Like we could do these in university settings, but we can, like, why wasn't your iPhone around 20 years ago either? Like, look, the ability to do it was around, but the form factor wasn't. So as we come into these things, we're seeing like now, and Guy's an expert at this now, you can do stuff, and every year, of course, it changes, like the ability to do it and have it available and have batteries last longer and have, lights that can do different power. I mean, it's quite remarkable. So the safety was never a concern. People think, hey, I'm, sitting with a helmet, like I'm doing something to my brain. It's like, oh yeah, you are doing something to your brain. You're basically giving your brain therapy and blood flow that it couldn't get before. So it's not that why are we doing it now? We weren't doing it before. We were doing it before. We just couldn't do it at your house, right? That was the difference. If we could have done it at your house, trust me, we would have been having this would have been a boring conversation, because we would have been talking about the first wheel, because there's nothing that in the literature that says this isn't a good thing to do, right? This is a very positive thing to do with a number of benefits. We just couldn't do it in medicine.
Well, I'll add in a couple of pieces. So one, on the light therapy side, that one is easy. Just think about the sun, right? You walk outside in the sun on a sunny day. You're, in Arizona. Because I hear George and Gabe are kind of cold, but it's a sunny day. You walk outside in the sun and you get about 20,000 times as much near infrared light in 15 minutes than you would with the helmet, right? Like our bodies are designed for this. We give a tiny dose. We could use like a full red bed and get a massive dose, and it's still tiny compared to what we get if you got up in the morning, at dawn and went for a 30-minute walk. you would get, again, 20,000 times the amount of infrared light energy into your body, and you'd be fine. You'd be good for it, right? So from a light energy standpoint, absolutely, utterly, completely safe when we're talking red and near infrared. There's no maximum, there's no downside. We're built for it. When we get into the transcranial stimulation, we get into whether it's pulse magnetic or electric, alternating current, direct current. We get into those. So there's a different question, and that we want to look to the research for. And sure enough, when we look into the research, you're hard pressed to find any application of it, in millions of trials where there was anything that rises to the level that's called a significant adverse effect, right? Like 0 in millions of trials. So then we have, minor things that show up in that somebody will say, well, I had a headache for 15 minutes, or my skin was a little red where the electrode was placed. And sure enough, that happens. But in terms of significant adverse effects, none. And so we just know by the sheer number of applications of these technologies and the lack of any negative side effect, they're incredibly safe, right? So that speaks to both sides of it, photobiomodulation and neuromodulation, completely safe. We're giving the body something that is natural to the body at a level that is equal to or less than a bioidentical dose, right? And so the body receives it very well, right? As almost an endogenous or natural communication.
And when you offer the brain these extra resources, and you often say as well that then the body and the brain will utilize that energy for healing, for regeneration, repair. And you're finding, you might speak a bit to when someone does have dementia or does have actual symptoms of a cognitive issue, that speak a bit to this area where it's not about curing or not being able to do anything, but this sort of sometimes a middle ground where you can actually treat symptoms where you're not just band-aiding them, you're improving the function of the brain, which then improves these symptoms dramatically. And like you told the story in your PowerPoint about someone being able to function better.
Yeah, so one of my dementia clients, her day was basically, in bed until noon, until somebody would help her downstairs, sit in a recliner, stare out a window till evening. Somebody would help her back into bed, and that was pretty much her day to day, every day. And so I came along fairly late in her condition. About 5 years previously, she'd been diagnosed, and relatively quickly, she became more interactive. So just kind of talking a bit more and interacting a little bit more. And then, a few weeks went by, and then it was getting up on her own and coming downstairs kind of unaided. And then it was coming downstairs to have breakfast. Then it was coming downstairs to make breakfast. And this was in many ways, this was just restoring the function that was there, but the brain had kind of been dysregulated. It had the ability to communicate with multiple regions, to coordinate multiple functions, had been degraded, and we were able to restore that. And as we did, those functions came back online, and so depression, again, kind of comorbid with dementia, and depression is debilitating in its own way. And so again, using these devices to do something like kind of treat affect, so kind of more mood, has a profound effect, right? It's motivation. It's the person who's not getting out of bed because they just don't see the point. And if we can change that function was there, it was just latent, more because of affect than the disease. So being able to address the brain on multiple layers, multiple levels, not just the physiology, but also the function, is what allows us to get results without even having to talk about, are we treating the disease, right? And again, I think that's an important conversation and a valuable one, and I like to have that conversation. But but we don't need to get derailed by that, right? And people get caught up in it. Are you or aren't you? And I don't think you can, and therefore, I'm not going to give this a try because my doctor says you can't treat it. I just want to stay in the area of we can help the brain do what brains do better, regardless of the condition. And I've never had a client complain about, getting better. Like when they can do more today than they could do yesterday, like there's never a complaint. There's just, people are just happy about that. So I see a question came in about sessions and how long are the sessions. So good question. Thank you. So a couple of different ways to answer this, right? So my general rule in light therapy is 30 minutes, right? And that's a very general rule, but nevertheless, it fits. So if a person's doing a nasal laser, you want to do a nasal laser once or twice a day for 30 minutes. If you're doing the helmet, again, 30 minutes. The AVE has got timed sessions, so those are more structured, so you just do the length of the session. And then for my dementia clients, my treatment protocol is, an optimal protocol is 30 minutes twice a day. So that's helmet, AVE, nasal laser, all three at the same time, like we saw the image of the person in the PowerPoint doing all three at the same time, 30 minutes twice a day. Would they do okay at 30 minutes once a day? Yes. Would they do okay at 30 minutes every other day? Yes. But my optimal treatment plan is 30 minutes twice a day, and then we take whatever we can get. And I know we're at a point where Dr. Drobot needs to get back to his patients in the clinic. So we probably, kind of wrap things up here. If there are questions people want answered, you're welcome to post it into the chat. We can download the chat and follow up, in email with questions. So you're more than welcome to pop in any final questions before we go. And Dr. Drobot, was there any parting messages from your side?
No, I think it's people always ask where they can go and find things. And so again, the website will be www.cerebralfit.com. When you go there, you just enter the contact information and you'll speak with Guy. And again, a lot of these, a lot of us will listen to things, but really we're listening to things for a personal reason. And so sometimes it's always nice to be able to have that conversation with Guy one-on-one and say, this is what I'm interested in. Of course, I'm always interested in optimization, but there are people with afflictions out there, and I think you'll find that you have a great resonance with Guy and the technology. So thank you for attending.
Yeah, and I want to say to everyone, the website also has a lot of video content, as well as the YouTube channel, some videos specifically talking about the devices, how they work, and there's a lot of information you can gain from the website, as well as contact Guy directly. So. And we'll hopefully we'll be back probably in 2 or 3 months to do another one of these to follow up and answer more questions. And if anybody has more questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. And when we send out the replay, we can also answer some questions, in the emails that go out to the replay to everybody. So,
thank you, Gabe, for moderating.
Yes, thank you, Gabe.
Thank you guys for what you do. Appreciate it. All right. Take care, everybody.